and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 1st July 2025, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be covering the 7 set of current affairs issues which have featured in today's newspaper. And the handout of this very discussion is available in the description below for your future reference. Beginning with the analysis section, as this year marks the beginning of the 50th year since the imposition of emergency, which was done in 1975. So in this backdrop, we'll try to understand that what all lessons we can learn from the past, from those darkest chapter of India's democratic polity. Moving on to the second topic, as Digital India Mission completes 10 years, so in this backdrop, we'll be comprehensively analyzing the effectiveness of this particular mission. Moving on to the simplified section, herein we'll be covering the 5 set of current affairs issues in the most simple manner possible, and we'll also be doing the necessary value addition which would be relevant for your prelims examination. So stay tuned. Now beginning with the first topic, wherein we'll try to understand that what all lessons we learned from the darkest chapter of our democratic history. I'm basically referring to the national emergency which was proclaimed way back in 1975. This year marks the beginning of 50th year since the national emergency was proclaimed way back in 1975. This particular topic we can associate with GS paper 2, especially the amendments and the significant provisions. Now, before we look into that what all lessons we learned from this darkest chapter of India's democratic polity, let's just note down certain prelim pointers with regard to national emergency. So, emergency provisions are basically provided under Part 18th of the Indian Constitution, and we have Article 352 to 360. So, when you talk about national emergency, it is provided under Article 352. When you talk about precedent rule, that is provided under Article 356 and 365. And the financial emergency is provided under Article 360. Now, herein we will be looking into the provisions which are related to national emergency only. So, since independence, national emergency has been proclaimed thrice. In 1962, when we were engaged in India-China war, and in 1971, when we were engaged with, the liberation of Bangladesh from Pakistan. So, at that time, we were engaged in a war with Pakistan. So, when national emergency was proclaimed in these two times, in these two instances, it was done on the ground of external grounds. Okay, that is, it was proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression. The last emergency that was proclaimed in 1975, this is problematic. Why? Because it was proclaimed on the ground of internal disturbance. Okay. That is why it is severely criticized by the experts. Why it is criticized, we will be learning in the subsequent slides, don't worry. Now, let's just note down the process of its approval. So, previously in the original constitution, the Prime Minister can advise the President with regard to proclamation of national emergency, and the President would be proclaiming the national emergency. And this power was misused by the Honorable Prime Minister Indira Gandhi at that time. She just merely informed the President that proclaim the national emergency, and the cabinet ministers got to know once the national emergency was proclaimed. That is the reason the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act incorporated a safeguard in this respect. So now if you read the constitution, the Prime Minister can advise the President to proclaim the national emergency, and the President can do so only when the President gets the recommendation from the cabinet in written form. Then the two houses of the parliament has to approve the proclamation of national emergency within 1 month. Originally, this time period was 2 months. So again, this time period was reduced by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Then both houses have to approve the proclamation of national emergency through special majority. Original constitution, it was simple majority only. Again, the safeguard was incorporated by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Then another safeguard which was introduced in the constitution by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act was that we would be needing continuous parliamentary approval every 6 months. Okay. So once the parliament gives the approval, the national emergency could remain in operation for 6 months. Then again you will be needing parliamentary approval. And when I am saying parliamentary approval, again this needs to be backed by a special majority, not by a simple majority. Okay, in the original constitution, once the national emergency is proclaimed, it would remain in operation until and unless the president pass a subsequent proclamation revoking the national emergency. Okay, so this safeguard was introduced by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Then in the constitution, there is no maximum time limit, okay, till what time the national emergency could remain in operation, because the grounds of imposition of national emergency is war, external aggression, and now another ground is armed rebellion. In place of internal disturbance, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act replaced this internal disturbance with armed rebellion. Okay. Now, if India is engaged in war, how can we set a limit that national emergency could be in operation for a limited point of time? So, that is the reason in the constitution we have not provided with the maximum time frame till which the national emergency could remain in operation, like what we have in case of precedent rule. In case of precedent rule, it can remain in operation for a maximum time period of 3 years. Okay, but such time limit is not mentioned in the constitution when it comes to the national emergency. Okay, so this is the approval process. Let's look into the revocation process. Initially in the original constitution, parliament has no role to play when it comes to revoking the national emergency. It was only the president who could revoke the national emergency with a subsequent proclamation. But again in this regard, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act introduced a safeguard. So now in the constitution what it is written, that if 1/10 of the total number of the members of Lok Sabha, they give in writing a notice to the speaker if the house is in session, and if the house is not in session, then this written notice would be given to the president. And once this notice is given either to the speaker or to the president, then a special session needs to be organized within 14 days so that the Lok Sabha could look into this particular issue, that whether the national emergency should continue or it should be done away with. Okay, and if Lok Sabha passes a resolution in this regard backed by simple majority, then the president has to revoke the national emergency. Okay, as you can see, this safeguard again was introduced by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Now, what is the difference between approval process and revocation process? For approval, you need special majority, and for revocation, we need simple majority. And when it comes to approval, you need approval from both the houses of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. But when it comes to revocation, you only need the approval from the Lok Sabha, not Rajya Sabha. Now, let's just look into the effects of national emergency. So, how it impacts the center-state relation. So, in the executive domain, what happens? Normal times, center can give directions to the states on certain matters. Okay. With regard to welfare of scheduled tribes, etc. But during national emergency, the center can give directions to the states on any matter, literally on any matter, and the state is obliged to follow the center's directions. Then what all change we witness in the legislative relation? So during national emergency, the parliament becomes competent to enact laws on the subjects which are there in the state list. Although during the national emergency, it's not like the state legislatures are suspended or dissolved. No, they are in operation. But if there is a conflict between the law created by the parliament and the law created by the state legislature, so in that case, it is a parliamentary law which would prevail over the laws made by the state legislatures. Okay, and during the national emergency, if the two houses of the parliament are not in session, then in that case, president gets the power to issue ordinances on the state subjects. And such a law which would be made by the parliament during the national emergency, such a law would become inoperative 6 months after the emergency has ceased to operate. Okay, so let's suppose on this particular date, emergency ceased to operate, then for 6 more months, the law would operate, and after that, it would cease to operate. Then what all changes we witness in the financial relation? So during the national emergency, the president can modify the constitutional distribution of revenues between the center and the state. What do we mean by the term modify? The president can reduce the transfers, from the center to the state, or it can completely cancel the distribution of revenue, the transfer from the center to the states. But such presidential order which intends to tweak this constitutional distribution of revenue, such presidential order needs to be led before the parliament. Why? Because Rajya Sabha is there to protect the interest of the states. Okay, so such presidential order needs to be led before the houses of the parliament, and such modification in the constitutional distribution of revenue would be continuing till the end of the financial year in which the emergency ceased to operate. Now, this was the impact when it comes to center-state relation, how it impacts the life or the term of Lok Sabha and the State Legislative Assembly. So, when the national emergency is under operation, the term of Lok Sabha as well as State Legislative Assemblies could be increased beyond the normal term of 5 years. But we can increase the term 1 year at a time. Okay, it could not happen that with the parliamentary law at one go you can increase the term of Lok Sabha or the State Legislative Assembly for 2 years. Okay, this is not allowed. You can increase it 1 year at a time. As you can see, the 5th Lok Sabha, okay, its tenure was extended twice but 1 year at a time. And this could be done by a parliamentary law. If you talk about Lok Sabha also, if you talk about state legislative assemblies also, the term could be extended only with a parliamentary law. And this extension cannot continue beyond a period of 6 months after the emergency ceased to operate. So that within 6 months we can make the necessary arrangement and the elections could be conducted. Okay, so this 6 months is a kind of buffer period. Then what is the impact on fundamental rights? So, when you talk about Article 358, when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression, the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 19, that automatically gets suspended. Okay, so the 6 fundamental rights, basically freedom of speech and expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of profession, etc., that automatically gets suspended. I made mention of this thing that when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression. So that means this article would come into effect only when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression. Article 19, the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under that would not be suspended when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of armed rebellion. Okay, so this would be operating only in case when the national emergency has been proclaimed on war or external aggression grounds. Then when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression, the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 19, that remains suspended throughout the duration till the time the national emergency is operative. Okay, and this would remain suspended for the entire country. It would not be like in one state only, the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 19 would remain suspended. No, all the states, all the area which comes under India, everywhere the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 19, that would remain suspended till the time the national emergency is in operation and when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression. Okay, so all the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy, that remains suspended completely. Then another article which deals with the effect of national emergency on fundamental rights, that is Article 359. So herein the fundamental rights would not be automatically suspended. Okay, only those fundamental rights would be suspended which would be mentioned in the presidential order. And what do I mean suspension of fundamental rights? Suspension of fundamental rights means we lose the right to seek remedy from the court for its enforcement. It's not like the fundamental right is taken away altogether. No, it exists. But yes, in case of violation of fundamental right, which is mentioned in the presidential order, we cannot seek a remedy from the court. Okay. Now, it operates in both the cases. If the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression, or the national emergency is proclaimed on the ground of armed rebellion. Okay, so it would be operative both in case of external emergency as well as internal emergency. Internal emergency, basically national emergency being proclaimed on the grounds of armed rebellion. Then the suspension, okay, till what time those fundamental rights would remain suspended, that needs to be specified by the president in the presidential order. And in what all parts of India the fundamental rights which are mentioned in the presidential order would remain suspended, that also needs to be mentioned in the presidential order. Okay, so it can extend to entire country, the suspension of fundamental right, or it could be limited to a particular part as well. Okay, why? Because here we are also talking about suspension of fundamental rights on the grounds of armed rebellion. So we could be witnessing armed rebellion in a particular state. So the president through a presidential order could restrict or suspend the fundamental rights in that particular state only. Okay, that is why this provision is there in the constitution. That's the logic. And the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act again incorporated a safeguard in this respect, that even when the national emergency is under operation, the government cannot suspend the fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 20 and under Article 21. Okay, because these are considered to be as natural rights. And one safeguard which 44th Constitutional Amendment Act also introduced with respect to this Article 358 is that the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 19, that would automatically be suspended only in case of external emergency. Okay, previously it could be done when there is external emergency or the national emergency has been proclaimed on the grounds of armed rebellion. But the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act stated this, that now the 6 fundamental rights that we enjoy under Article 19 could be automatically suspended only when the national emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war or external aggression. Now, let's just now unfold the story when it comes to the national emergency which was proclaimed way back in 1975. What was the reasons? First and the foremost reason was electoral challenges which the then Honorable Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was facing. Why? Because Raj Narayan has went to the court and the Raj Narayan has pointed out that Indira Gandhi has used some electoral malpractices to get elected. And in this backdrop, Allahabad High Court in state of UP versus Raj Narayan 1975 verdict held Indira Gandhi, accountable for electoral malpractices. And Allahabad High Court also debarred her from recontesting the election for next 6 years. Then we were also witnessing political instability as well. So total revolution was led by Jayaprakash Narayan, which talked about overthrowing the Congress government when it comes to state of Bihar. Then on account of high inflation, on account of high unemployment, we were witnessing unrest, student unrest in the state of Gujarat and Bihar, and the students were also upset from the government because of the huge corruption which was going on. And the railway employees also went on a strike which was led by George Fernandez in 1974. They demanded better service conditions, and the worker rights issue was brought in front of the government. Then we were witnessing a lot of economic related challenges also. We were basically witnessing a situation called stagflation. What is stagflation? Stagnation in the GDP. Okay, so our GDP was not performing well, the industrial activity was going down, but we also had inflation. So inflation was increasing day by day, but we were witnessing stagnation in the GDP. So that is why the unemployment levels were also going up. This was one of the major reasons of this student unrest in the states of Gujarat and Bihar. And another reason was basically your corruption as well. Then there was conflict with the judiciary. Why? Because the judiciary in the Keshwanandan Bharti case landmark judgment of 1973 came up with this doctrine of basic structure doctrine, wherein it limited the constituent powers of the parliament by stating that whatever we are going to, figure it out that, okay, this thing would be coming under basic structure doctrine, the parliament would not be having the power to amend that particular feature by using its constituent power which is provided to Parliament under Article 368. So this was another reason. Then there was lack of internal democracy. Why? Because there was huge concentration of powers in the hand of then Honorable Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Okay, as we can understand this by the mere fact that she alone advised the president with regard to proclamation of national emergency. Her cabinet ministers got to know when the national emergency was proclaimed. So there was huge concentration of power. Okay, and this was abused. More powers come with more responsibility, but that responsibility was not upheld at that time. Then why this emergency situation is criticized vehemently by the experts? Because of the drastic effects that we witnessed during this national emergency, which was proclaimed in 1975. First and the foremost impact was the suspension of civil liberties. And one of the judgment, that is ADM Jabalpur versus Shivkant Shukla in 1976. This is one of the most criticized judgment of the Supreme Court, wherein the Supreme Court said that during emergency, you can be put behind the bars, okay, and you don't have the right to try, okay. That means right to seek remedy for the court for violation of Article 21, which talks about right to life and personal liberty, that is not at all provided, okay. So according to the court, your right to seek remedy in order to protect your right to life and personal liberty gets suspended when the national emergency is under operation. And that is the reason the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, if you remember in the previous slide we discussed, introduced the safeguard that even when the national emergency is in operation, the natural rights like Article 20, Article 21 cannot be taken away by the government. Okay, because these are natural rights. But during the emergency, such natural rights were also taken away from the citizens. Then a lot of opposition leaders, Morarji Desai, Jayaprakash Narayan, L.K. Advani, they all were put behind the bars without trial because your right to seek legal remedy was suspended. Okay, and the government used draconian laws like the Maintenance of Internal Security Act, Defence of India Act and Defence of India rules to put all these opposition leaders behind the bar or to detain them without trial. Then there was censorship of the press also. So the government used to monitor that what all information the press is releasing. That is the reason the newspapers like Indian Express, okay, they published blank editorial and stated that sorry, it is blank, okay, to basically raise their concerns with regard to this press censorship which was going on. So there was severe curtailment of freedom of press also, and ultimately it was a severe curtailment of right to dissent as well, which is also an right that you enjoy under right to freedom of speech and expression. Okay, then various Constitutional Amendment Act were given effect, which curtailed the power of the judiciary. For example, 38th Constitutional Amendment Act 1975 stated that when it comes to the satisfaction of the president with regard to imposition of different emergencies that is there, that would be immune from judicial review. And in 39th Constitutional Amendment Act, the government basically tried to immune the electoral disputes related to office of Prime Minister, related to office of Speaker from the judicial review. Then 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was enacted by the government, and through this the government amended the Article 368 and it stated that we have unlimited constituent powers and no Constitutional Amendment Act could be challenged in any court even on the grounds that that particular Constitutional Amendment Act is violating any of the fundamental rights. So basically through this 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, the Parliament tried to restore its uncontrolled or unbridled constituent powers. Then there was forced sterilization also in the backdrop of controlling the population, okay, and it severely impacted the people living in slums and basically the minority sections and the poor and marginalized section. Now, what all key lessons we can learn from the darkest chapters of our democratic politic? First and foremost, we need to prevent despotism. Despotism means we should not allow a single person to have concentration of powers. That is the reason we have discussed in the previous slide how 44th Constitutional Amendment Act incorporated a lot of safeguards in this respect. How it stated that president can proclaim national emergency only after the president gets the recommendation from the cabinet in written form. And 44th Constitutional Amendment Act stated that no, the satisfaction of the president would not be immune from judicial review. So it would be subjected to judicial review. And this was upheld by the Supreme Court in Minerva Mills case also in 1980. The Supreme Court stated that when it comes to the satisfaction of the precedent with regard to proclamation of emergencies, that would be subject to judicial review if that is based on malafide grounds. Then we understood from this particular time that how much important it is to safeguard the fundamental rights. And that is the reason 44th Constitutional Amendment Act incorporated a lot of provisions. We have already discussed this thing with regard to Article 358 and with regard to Article 359. Then we understood that how much important it is to protect the right to dissent, to protect the freedom of press. And that is the reason the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act again introduced one safeguard, that is Article 361A, which provided the immunity to the journalist from any civil or criminal proceeding before any court if they are doing true reporting of the legislative proceedings. Okay, so we understood that how much important it is to safeguard the freedom of press. Then we understood that how much important it is to put in place an independent judiciary, and we don't need a committed judiciary. Committed judiciary, why I am saying with respect to this particular judgment, wherein the court actually went along with the lines of the executive. So understanding this thing, in Minerva Mills case, the Supreme Court clearly stated that when it comes to the constituent powers of the parliament, it is limited, and the parliament do not have the power to take away the judicial review powers from the court, because judicial review is part of the basic structure doctrine. Then we understood that we need to prevent centralization of the powers, and that is the reason again 44th Constitutional Amendment Act introduced a lot of safeguards when it comes to the proclamation of the precedent rule. So 44th Constitutional Amendment Act stated that the precedent rule could be allowed to operate in a particular state beyond a period of 1 year only when two conditions are satisfied. One, if the national emergency is in operation in the entire country or in that particular state, or if the Election Commission of India clearly states that because of the law and order situation, it is very difficult to carry out the election, okay, when it comes to that particular state legislative assembly. If these grounds are satisfied, only then the precedent rule could operate in that particular state beyond this time period of 1 year, okay. So we understood the importance of decentralization of powers, and we understood that why it is needed to protect the federal setup. Then during the emergency, we also understood that how much important it is for we as citizens to participate in the democratic process. And this was very well reflected through the total revolution which was led by Jayaprakash Narayan. And that is the reason over a period of time the government has also understood that how much important it is to ensure active participation of the people when it comes to democratic process. That is the reason we are now coming up with social audits. We have come up with mygovernment.in platform, okay, wherein the government is ensuring citizens' participation when it comes to formulation of policies, etc. So these are the major lessons that we can learn from the darkest chapter of India's democratic polity. I have framed a practice question for you people, so do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, the next topic is related to Digital India mission. Today, this mission has completed 10 years. So in this backdrop, we will be effectively analyzing this particular mission, its achievement as well as the challenges that we are witnessing. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 2, especially the topic related to e-governance. Now let's just note down certain facts with regard to this mission. So by now you would have understood that since 10 years has completed, so this mission would have been launched way back in 2015, okay, and it was on this day only, 1st July. And what was the aim of this particular mission? To basically make the life simpler for Indian citizens by ensuring enhanced use of technology and also to ensure digital empowerment of the citizens. Implementing agency was basically your Department of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, what were the key services which the government is focusing under this particular mission? So the government is trying to improve the digital infrastructure through schemes like BharatNet, PM Vani scheme, okay, by putting in place a network of common service centers which are actually situated in the rural areas, which provide the e-governance related services to the people who are living in the rural and remote areas. Then improving the delivery of services from the e-government platforms, like we have Umang app, okay, we have M-Parivahan app. Then we are promoting the real-time transaction through UPI app, etc. And it is also focusing upon digital empowerment of the citizens. So the government is also focusing upon improving the digital literacy of the citizens. And this is something we are doing under PM Disha scheme. Okay. And we have also come up with mygovernment.in app, which is improving citizens' participation when it comes to formulation of policies. Now, what are the key milestones which the PIB has highlighted? Okay. So 2015, we came up with this particular mission. 2016, we came up with Bharat interface for, money app, basically the Bheem app. Then 2017, to improve the tax collection, we came up with the GSTN network. Then we came up with PM Disha scheme. As I told you, this intends to improve the digital literacy, especially among the rural population. Then in 2019, in order to give a boost to manufacturing of electronic components and devices, the government came up with the national policy on electronics, okay, so that we can make India a global hub when it comes to electronic components design and manufacturing, and reducing our dependence upon other countries like China when it comes to the domain of the electronics. Then we came up with Arogya Setu app during the COVID-19 pandemic, and this app enabled us to effectively manage the COVID-19 pandemic because it could highlight the hotspot, it could do contact tracing also, okay, and through this app the government could effectively give advices to the people that what all precautions we need to take. Then in 2021, the government inaugurated the Umang International. So as I told you, Umang app, wherein you get a lot of e-governance related services. So we launched the international version of this so that the Indian, people, students who are living in other countries like US, UK, Canada, Australia, they can easily get the government of India related services related to passport and visa, etc. And under this Umang International, we also have the Indian Culture Services section. Okay, to basically promote the interest among the foreign tourists so that they can come and visit India. So, international version of Umang app was launched. Then in 2022, we came up with the National Language Translation Mission, basically the Bhashini mission, wherein the government is trying to make sure that whatever data is available on the government website, it could be effectively be translated into the local languages by using the AI tools. Okay, 2023 we hosted the G20 in India. Okay, and in 2024 we hosted the Global India AI Summit, wherein we emphasized upon this thing that how much important it is to democratize the AI technology which is there, and we should also move in the direction of responsible AI. Then what all achievements we have made under this particular mission? So we have made a remarkable improvement. If you look into the total telephone connections in India, in 2014, we merely had 93 crores telephone connections, and in 2025, it has increased to 120 crores in India. So huge improvement. And similarly, we are witnessing remarkable improvement when you talk about the total number of internet connections in India. So according to Ministry of Communication, in 2015, okay, before this mission was launched, we merely had roughly 25 crore internet connection. And now because of this Digital India mission, in 2024, we have roughly 96 to 97 crore internet connections across India. Now, because of improvement in digital infrastructure, the government has put in place 5G towers in more than 90% of the districts. Because of this, what is happening, as we have moved from 4G to 5G, the mobile data cost has come down to a great extent. If you look at data provided by Ministry of Communication, in 2014, 1 GB used to cost us more than 300 rupees. And in 2022, 1 GB cost us merely 9 to 10 rupees. So because of improvement in digital infrastructure, we have been able to reduce the mobile data cost as well. Then because of this UPI interface, more and more number of people, as you can see, are using this UPI interface to do the cashless transactions. And if you go by the Ministry of Finance data, in 2023, roughly 50% of the global real-time payments originated in India. So this UPI is basically enabling us to move in the direction of cashless economy, and this would go a long way in addressing the issue of tax evasion. Okay, because when you don't do transaction in cash and when you do everything through this UPI app or other payments app which is there, so everything it is transparent. Okay, you cannot fault on your tax obligations. So this would go a long way in addressing the issue of tax evasion as well. Then when you talk about the Aadhaar ecosystem, the government has issued over 142 crore Aadhaar ID cards. This is enabling us to realize the idea of paperless governance. Okay, so because of e-Aadhaar you can use this Aadhaar to get your bank verification done by using eKYC, and because of this Aadhaar ecosystem we are able to save a lot amount of money through direct benefit transfers. Okay, so this is giving a boost to e-governance further, and it is enabling us to realize the idea of paperless governance. Then as I was talking about the Bhashni app, okay, wherein we are making use of the artificial intelligence tools to basically make sure that the data which is available on a government website could be translated into other local languages. Currently, this app supports 35 plus languages. Over a period of time, by making use of artificial intelligence tool, we would be providing the content in other local languages as well. So here we make use of voice-based interface, and once you speak, then this app would be translating the content in your local languages. Okay. Now today's newspaper highlight various other achievements of this particular mission, like this one, affordable data we have discussed, UPI transactions we have discussed. Then because of the PLI scheme for the electronic manufacturing sector, India has now become the second largest mobile manufacturer in the world. Okay, so this is another achievement that we can quote. Then as I told you, 5G towers have been put in place in more than 90% of the districts. Then under the BharatNet project, we are realizing the idea of digitally connected villages. Okay, so with the help of optical fibers, we are providing internet connectivity to our gram panchayats. So under this BharatNet program, we have been able to link more than 2 lakh gram panchayats. Then the common service centers have also multiplied over a period of time. 2014, we merely had 96,000 common service centers, and now it has increased to, okay, it has increased 5 times. So 5-fold increase we have seen. So this would again give a boost to the idea of e-governance, especially in the rural and the remote areas. Then we have also made remarkable improvement when it comes to semiconductor. We are realizing the idea of self-reliance. Okay, so PLI scheme is also there for the semiconductor. Then through direct benefit transfer, we have been able to reduce the leakages, as I told you, and this is done by using the Aadhaar ecosystem as well. So by using this DBT, we have been able to save roughly 3.5 lakh crore. So this helps us in reducing the leakages and realizing the idea of transparency also. Then on account of government e-marketplace, public procurement has been done worth 13.4 lakh crores. This has given boost to MSMEs as well as startups. Then with the help of e-NAM, we are empowering our farmers also so that they can directly sell their agriculture product to the consumers. So under the e-NAM, we have been able to connect 1400 plus mandis, and this is enabling the trade of agriculture produce worth 4 lakh crore. So do make a note of this data point, because wherever you will be talking about the digital India mission or e-governance for that matter, you can easily quote this particular data point. This is given by the government itself. Okay, to highlight the progress that we have made when it comes to realizing the idea of e-governance or digital India mission. Okay, digital empowerment of the citizens. Now, these are the achievements. What all challenges we are still facing? The first and foremost challenge is the digital divide. So if you go by the Oxfam India report of India Inequality Report 2022, digital divide, we are witnessing digital divide on gender basis, on caste basis, and between rural and urban areas also. If you talk on gender basis, women constitute merely 1/3 of the internet users in India. So women, majorly, they are not allowed to use the internet services or the mobile internet based services. And digital illiteracy is quite high among the women also. Women are not the ones who majorly use the UPI mode of transaction. Then we are also witnessing digital divide in the rural and urban areas. Again, according to this report, merely 31% of the rural population know how to make use of internet services. However, the number is quite high when it comes to urban areas, 67%. Then we are witnessing division based on caste wise also. If you talk about using the computers or using the mobile phones, okay, general category has high digital literacy, and when you compare it with the STs, okay, scheduled tribes, there is a gap of roughly 7 to 8%. So we are witnessing digital divide on different fronts. And then another problem is also the accessibility thing. We have not linked our Digital India mission with the Accessible India campaign. Even today, more than 50% of the disabled people find it very difficult to make use of the government platforms which are there, okay, e-government platforms which are there. Then we are facing issue with regard to digital literacy also. If you go by the report of 2021 of Internet and Mobile Association of India, merely 34% of the India's population know how to use the internet services, how to use the computers, etc. This is a huge challenge when it comes to, realizing or giving effect to e-governance, especially in the rural areas. Then cyber frauds are increasing year by year. So if you go by the data point provided by the RBI, as you can see how the cyber frauds have witnessed a remarkable increase from 2019-20 to 2023-24. When you witness huge amount of cyber frauds, ultimately it would undermine the trust of the citizens when it comes to using the UPI apps, okay. Then there are privacy concerns also. So according to a report of US-based cybersecurity firm Resecurity, it has made a comment that 81 crores Indian Aadhaar data is available on dark web. So when such information come in the public domain, ultimately you and me would be thinking twice when it comes to using the e-governance related services. So this is another challenge which undermines the citizens' trust when it comes to the e-governance thing. And as in the recent times, we are witnessing the issue of digital arrest also, that is further eroding citizens' trust when it comes to the e-governance. And then there are infrastructure bottlenecks even today. If you look into the internet speed, it is quite less when it comes to India if you compare it with advanced countries like South Korea. Now in this backdrop, what needs to be done then? So we need to bridge the digital divide. For this, we need to club BharatNet with PM Wani scheme, okay, wherein the local shops owners, they can become the Wi-Fi, providers. So this would enable us to address the digital divide, especially the rural and urban digital divide. Then we need to enhance the cyber security framework. In this respect, we should be guided by the European Union General Data Protection Rules, wherein they have imposed fines on major multinational companies like Google, WhatsApp, etc. So they are very strict when it comes to protecting the right to privacy of their citizens, okay, and they have strict data localization laws as well. So this is something we need to learn when it comes to European Union. Then we need to promote digital literacy. So in this respect, we can, align the Digital India mission with the Skill India mission. So we should make sure not just that the rural population know that, okay, how to use the mobile internet. No, we should also provide them the new digital age skills as well, okay, so that they can have higher employability capacity as well. Then we need to integrate the digital public goods. Digital public goods, basically I'm talking about the Umang app, your UPI, your Aadhaar, etc. So we need to integrate all these digital public goods which we are having so that we can enhance the use value of the data. The more would be the integration between the different apps, better would be the usability of the data, okay. Then ensuring inclusive digital access. So in this regard, we need to again club the Accessible India campaign with the Digital India mission, so that we can make sure that even the disabled are able to, use these digital apps as well as e-governance platforms effectively. So we need to be guided by the idea of inclusive access to digital services. This would enable us to realize the idea of a dignified life when it comes to Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people, so do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, beginning with the simplified section, an editorial has appeared in The Hindu, wherein the writer is pointing out to certain uncertainties that we are witnessing across the world currently, and on what lines India needs to make the requisite changes when it comes to its foreign policy. This topic you can associate with GS paper 2. So what all uncertainties the writer is basically talking about? So the writer is talking about the uncertainty which the Trump administration has created because of this whole reciprocal tariff issue, okay, which is going to negatively impact the India's trade with USA. And since in this backdrop of reciprocal tariff, which would be given effect to from 9th of July, we are, making all our efforts to crack a deal with the USA, trade deal. But then in that backdrop, USA is demanding enhanced market access when it comes to genetically modified maize, genetically modified soybean, which is going to negatively impact our agriculture sector. So this is the challenge that we are witnessing when it comes to Trump, because he is guided by the idea of Make America Great Again. Then the writer has basically talked about the recent India-Pakistan conflict. In this backdrop, the writer is talking about that India needs to explore the China and Pakistan close nexus, because in the current escalations between India and Pakistan, China was the one which provided advanced missiles, drones technology to Pakistan. So India needs to closely monitor this China-Pakistan nexus which is emerging. Then the writer has talked about the neutral stance which India has maintained when it comes to the recent conflict that we witnessed between Israel and Iran. Why this is problematic? Because during this time, US basically made use of the JBU-57 bunker buster bomb on the Iran's nuclear facility that is situated in Fordo and Natanz. And nobody across the world said anything against US administration. And during this time of conflict, Iran would be looking forward for India's support, that India should come forward and it should, raise concerns with regard to what Israel and USA has done when it comes to Iran. But India has maintained the neutral stance. Then the writer is talking about that current times, nuclear word is no longer a taboo. And India is witnessing the threat of two-front war, Pakistan and China together. And why it is a challenge? Because if you look into the nuclear warheads which are there with China, China has an advantage of 3:1 if you compare the nuclear warheads when it comes to China and India. And if you combine the nuclear warheads of China and Pakistan, then they both have an advantage of 5:1. So this is the reason we need to also look into our nuclear doctrine that we have, no first use policy. Why this is also a concern? Because these two neighbors that we have, China and Pakistan, they would not be guided by the moral obligation that we would not be using nuclear warheads at the first instance. Okay, so this is the reason we need to review our nuclear doctrine as well. Then the writer further pointed out that in the recent conflict escalation that we witnessed between India and Pakistan, whatever support India has provided to the nations in the global south, that has not bear fruit because nobody is taking India's side. Okay. And then Make America Great Again. This we have already discussed, that how it is negatively impacting India's trade when it comes to USA and how it is going to negatively impact, even if we crack this trade deal with US, how it is going to negatively impact the agriculture sector of India. Now in this respect, what India needs to actually do? India needs to further, study this growing China-Pakistan military connection. Until and unless you don't understand your opponent, you cannot devise an effective strategy, okay, that how you're going to protect yourself. So that is what the writer is talking about, that we need to effectively, take note of that how many J-10Cs and JF-17 fighters Pakistan is having and how many nuclear warheads China and Pakistan are having. Based on that, we should also enhance our defense capability. And another point which the writer is talking about, that we should do an in-depth analysis of our defense capability as recently has been done by UK. Okay, so UK has recently undertook an in-depth study of its defense capability wherein it figured out critical weaknesses, including the ammunition, okay, number of warheads that it has, the need to set up a new national armament system for a coordinated effect, okay, whenever the country would be entering into war, and new cyber and electromagnetic command, because nowadays there is enhanced use of drone technology, artificial intelligence, and aspects like electromagnetic maneuvers to neutralize the drones, okay. Nowadays we are witnessing advanced weapons also, loitering munitions, okay, which keep on moving on to litter like this at a particular place, and then they would be hitting the target. Glide bombs, etc. Now, since we are witnessing that different countries are using, advanced kind of weapons, we also need to upgrade the stockpile, ammunition stockpile that we have. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, an article has appeared in The Hindu wherein the writer is pointing out some concerns with regard to the GST framework with respect to taxation on tobacco products. This particular topic we can associate with GS paper 3, issues related to mobilization of resources, and you can also associate it with GS paper 2, issues related to health as well. Now, the writer is pointing out that it has been 8 years since we introduced GST framework in India. It was a landmark reform because it put in place the idea of one nation, one tax, and that has basically harmonized the tax rate across the states, which has given boost to ease of doing business as well and has facilitated greater economic integration of the country. And the writer is also pointing out that how the GST tax collection, gross GST tax collection, has witnessed a year-on-year growth of roughly 9 to 10%, and how it has eliminated the cascading of taxes with this input tax credit thing that we have. So what is input tax credit? If, let's suppose, on the final output a manufacturer has to pay this much of tax, 350, so he would not be paying the entire 350 amount, okay. We'll be looking into that what all tax the manufacturer has already paid on the inputs A, B and C. So the tax which ultimately has to be paid by the manufacturer would be the tax on the final output minus the tax which the manufacturer has already paid when it actually bought the input A, B and C. So ultimately the manufacturer would not be paying 350, rather he would be paying only 50 rupees as tax. Okay, so because of this input tax credit, this is leading to more formalization of the Indian economy. It is improving the compliance also, and with the e-way bills also, we are able to reduce the tax evasion because more and more, we are moving in the direction of e-governance as well. So that is enabling us to reduce the tax evasion. Then by the removal of interstate checkpoints, we are able to enhance the logistic efficiency also. Why? Because of this, the transportation time has reduced by 20%. But after highlighting the significance of GST framework, the writer has pointed out some concerns with regard to the taxation that is there on the tobacco products under the GST framework. So writer is making a point that India remains the second largest consumer of tobacco globally, and on a daily basis we are losing 3,500 people. This is causing us an economic burden of 1.4% of the GDP if you look into the GDP figure of 2017. So the writer is making a point that why we are not taxing the tobacco products effectively. If we want to reduce this economic burden, we need to tax the tobacco products effectively. What concern writer has pointed out that in the pre-GST period, okay, we used to witness increase in the taxation structure, okay, year on year. That led to 17% decline in the tobacco use. But after GST, what we are witnessing, there has not been any significant tax increase on tobacco production. Now, if the government is not increasing the taxation on any product, that means that product would become more and more affordable because the prices would not increase much. And that is what is happening in case of India. Now, the structural issue which the writer has pointed out with regard to GST is it is based on ad valorem tax. What is ad valorem tax? Wherein you have to pay a certain percentage of the value of the good, okay, monetary value of the good. So GST would be imposed on the value of good. Whatever value addition you have done, based on that, the GST would be imposed. Under GST, we don't have specific tax. Specific tax is basically imposed on how much quantity you are buying. Okay, it is not imposed on the value of the good, rather it is imposed on how many, let's suppose, cups of ice cream you are buying. Okay, so since the specific tax is missing when it comes to GST, that is the reason, we are not able to tax the tobacco products effectively. Because writer is making a point that when it comes to tobacco products, we need to impose specific taxes, okay, which should be based on how many quantity one is buying, not based on what is the value of the good. Why? Because if you go by the value of the good, there is huge inconsistency when the products. Cigarettes, they are costly, okay, you can get taxation. Cigarettes basically contribute over 80% of the tax revenue, but BDs, okay, their value is quite less because it is basically consumed by low income population, okay, so it is not taxed effectively. So if you go by the ad valorem tax, you will not be able to reduce the tobacco use prevalence. So that is the reason writer is making a point that the government should actually impose specific tax when it comes to tobacco so that we can reduce the consumption of tobacco when it comes to India. Another concern which the writer has pointed out, that this GST compensation thing, which is going to expire in March 2026. Since it is going to expire in March 2026, now the government would not be imposing more cess on the tobacco products because it does not have to give the compensation to the states, okay, for the fall in their GST revenue after the implementation of GST. So if the government is not going to impose this GST compensation cess, this would further make the tobacco products more and more affordable. So this is the concern. Then the writer is pointing out that whenever the government talks of increasing the tax on tobacco products, the tobacco industry, okay, they talk about that if you increase the tax, then it would increase the illicit trade in the tobacco products. But the writer is pointing out that based on severe, various studies, we have got to know that this illicit trade basically is roughly 2 to 6%, okay. The industry basically claim that if you increase the taxation on tobacco products, then illicit trade when it comes to tobacco products would be roughly 25%. But according to writer, this is not true, okay. And the writer has further pointed out that since India has ratified the WHO protocol to eliminate illicit trade in the tobacco products, we need to effectively implement this particular protocol to bring down the illicit trade when it comes to tobacco products. Now, what way forward the writer has suggested? So, the writer has suggested that we need to basically impose 40% GST taxation when it comes to tobacco products, and along with that we need to impose the specific excise duty, which is a kind of specific tax, in order to bring down the tobacco consumption in India, okay. This would go a long way in realization of Article 47 of the DPSP. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, as recently an Italian luxury brand Prada has introduced chappals which are basically influenced from Kolhapuri chappal, which are a GI tag product. This has raised the concerns of cultural misappropriation. This particular topic we can associate with economy section in prelims. What is cultural misappropriation? Wherein a dominant culture is making use of some aspects of a minority culture, and the minority culture basically do not see this use of their cultural elements in a proper manner. So when you use the cultural elements of another culture in an improper manner, that is what is cultural misappropriation. Now, in this respect, let's just first understand what is the GI tag. So it is a kind of intellectual property which defines that this particular good originates from a particular place. And since it originates from a particular place, it has some unique characteristics. So currently, according to this article, we have more than 600 registered GI goods. So you have Darjeeling tea, you have Kanchipuram silk from Tamil Nadu, etc. This serves as a powerful marketing tool, okay, and this would give a boost to rural economy also, because if we say that, okay, this particular product is a GI tag product, so people from other states would be coming to buy that GI product, okay. So this would give a boost to local economy. And since it is not intellectual property which is with a company, since we are giving GI tag to a particular product, that means that product, if it is originating from that particular place, that would be getting the marketing support, okay. It is unlike the trademarks which is with a particular enterprise, and the enterprise can license the trademark and it can assign it to other company as well, okay. So it helps us in preserving the cultural knowledge of the local communities. Now, the legal protection for GI goods basically stem from this Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property. And then the clear definition of the GI tags was given in TRIPS agreement of 1995. And since India is a signatory of this particular agreement, we enacted our own Geographical Indication of Goods Registration and Protection Act way back in 1999. So how, if somebody tries to infringe upon GI tag products, how we can prevent that? So a particular registered proprietor or a authorized user can initiate an action with regard to such person who is violating or infringing with respect to this intellectual property. Let's suppose if that person is providing misleading details with regard to origin of that good, etc., then adequate action would be taken by the concerned authorities. Okay. Currently, however, we don't have any such framework wherein we can prevent the use of GI tags when it comes to another country. GI tags, this right is primarily territorial and it is limited to the country wherein that intellectual right protection has been given to that particular good. At present, no automatic world or international GI rights exist. So is it the first case of cultural misappropriation? No. Previously also we have seen this thing with regard to basmati rice, okay, wherein a US company tried to get patent with regard to lines and grains of basmati rice. So Indian authorities raised concern and ultimately the patent right was not given. Then similar thing we witnessed with regard to turmeric and similar thing we witnessed with regard to neem based antifungal formulations. Okay, so what we need to do in order to prevent such infringement of GI tag products? So we need to basically expand the traditional knowledge digital library wherein we need to maintain the record that what all things are rooted in our traditional knowledge, so that whenever other countries, companies try to get the patent right with regard to that particular traditional knowledge or that particular product, this would not be possible. Okay. Now let's just note down certain prelim pointers with regard to GI tag products. So since India is a signatory of WTO, we came up with this act as we have already discussed. The first product to get the GI tag was Darjeeling tea way back in 2004-2005. So we have Geographical Indication Registry which is situated in Chennai, which basically issue these tags, and this functions under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. What all types of products could be provided with this GI tag? So it could include agriculture products, food products, handicraft, manufactured goods, etc. And this GI tag is available for 10 years and it could be renewed any time. Now we have a PYQ with regard to this particular topic. Do let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now recently, India, since it is planning to increase or enhance its relation with the global south countries, Honorable Prime Minister is on a 5-nation visit currently. This topic we can associate with international relations. Now first and foremost, let's just understand what is this term global south. So global south basically refers to these countries, okay, which are there in South America, Africa, Asia, etc., which are basically developing, less developed, underdeveloped. What is global north? So it basically refers to the countries which are there in North America, Europe, here, okay, as well as Australia, which are more developed. So which line basically divides this global north from global south? So this is Brandt line, and this line was given in 1980s by Willy Brandt. Previously, the developing nations were referred to be as the third world, but since it was linked with poverty, political instability, etc., so we came up with a neutral term, that is global south. Now, what is the significance of global south? Why India is enhancing its relation with the countries which are there in the global south? Because of the rising economic power. If you combine the GDP of the BRICS nation, it has overtaken the combined GDP of the G7 nations. Then it has huge demographic dividend potential also, because the population in India or China, it is quite young as compared to the population which is there in the developed countries, because it is aging. Then we have made great advancement when it comes to innovation and technology, how China is beating USA when it comes to artificial intelligence, biotechnology, etc. India also have made great advancement when it comes to technology domain, okay, like we discussed the UPI, Umang app, etc. Then this particular region is driving solutions to the global challenges, like India has come up with the International Solar Alliance. So if we strengthen our relation with the countries which are there in the global south, we can basically voice the concerns of the global south when it comes to the international forums like UN, WTO, etc. Now let's just quickly look into the countries which the Honorable Prime Minister is going to visit. So firstly, he will be visiting Ghana, which is basically one of the West African fastest growing economy. And this would be the first bilateral visit to Ghana by first Indian Prime Minister in 3 decades. If you talk about the trade relation between the two countries, so India is the largest destination for Ghana, export goods. And when it comes to imports that we get from Ghana, it is basically the gold. Gold is something that we import from this particular country. So obviously during the visit, the two countries would take further steps to enhance the cooperation when it comes to energy, defense sector, etc. Then another country is Trinidad and Tobago, wherein 40 to 45% of Indian diaspora actually lives, and this would be the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister after 1999. The trade relation between the two countries have increased many-fold, okay, that you can see, and further when the Honorable Prime Minister would be visiting, we would be expanding that further. Then we have Argentina. So it would be the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 57 years. And we would basically be discussing how we can enhance the cooperation when it comes to defense, agriculture, mining, oil, gas, energy, etc. We have significantly improved our bilateral cooperation, especially when you talk about the mineral resource, specifically lithium. Argentina is also a major supplier of soybean as well as sunflower oil to India. And in 2024, India was Argentina's 5th largest trading partner and export destination. So the two countries would figure out that how we can further improve the trade relation. Another country which the Honorable Prime Minister would be visiting is Brazil. So the Honorable Prime Minister would be meeting the President of Brazil on the sidelines of BRICS Leader Summit. And when they would be meeting on the sidelines of BRICS Leader Summit, the two leaders would be discussing that what all reforms are needed in the global governance, peace, security, how to promote responsible use of artificial intelligence, etc. And the two countries would figure out that how they can further improve their trade relation in areas defense, energy, space, etc. Brazil is India's largest trading partner if you talk about the South America. And the last country is Namibia. This would be the 3rd Indian Prime Ministerial visit to the country. Bilateral trade between the two countries have grown manifold from roughly $3 million way back in 2000 to $600 million currently. Indian companies have also invested heavily in the mining, manufacturing and diamond processing, sectors which are there in Namibia. And under the project Cheetah, we got 8 cheetahs from Namibia, which were relocated in the Kuno National Park, which is situated in MP. So this is what we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. So the last topic of today's analyst is related to Financial Stability Report, which has been recently released by the RBI. This particular topic we can associate with prelims economy section. Let's just note down certain prelim pointers with regard to this report itself. So it is released twice in a year, usually in June and December by the RBI. So currently we are discussing the June report which has been recently released by RBI, wherein the RBI basically does the collective assessment of the subcommittee of Financial Stability and Development Council, which is headed by the governor of RBI. We'll be basically looking into that what all risk our financial sector is witnessing in the changing global scenarios. What is the significance of this particular report? So it helps us know that whether our financial system is robust to deal with the challenges which are emerging in the current times or not. And it also points out that whether the financial institutions, banks, NBFCs, etc., they do have the capacity to support growth or not. What is the figure, for example, with regard to NPAs? So what this June report has highlighted, that although we are witnessing, uncertain and challenging global economic situation because of Make America Great Again and reciprocal tariff debate, but then also when you talk about Indian economy, it has strong and sound macroeconomic fundamentals. So we are going to witness a growth rate. When you talk about real GDP, RBI has projected that we'll be witnessing the real GDP growth rate at 6.5% in financial year 2026. How do you calculate real GDP? So you multiply the quantity produced in the current year with the price that you have in the base year, whatever year you are considering as the base year. Okay, so that is how we get the real GDP. So the projection is quite optimistic when it comes to the real GDP. When it comes to outlook for inflation, the RBI has projected that inflation would remain within the bandwidth, the target which has been given to the Monetary Policy Committee, that is between 2% to 6%. Then when you talk about the NPA scenario, what the report has pointed out, that private banks basically account for more than 50% of the NPAs, especially in the unsecured retail loans. What is unsecured retail loans? Basically the loans that you give on the basis of credit cards, the loans like personal loans, etc. Then when you talk about the gross NPAs of scheduled commercial banks, it is expected by this particular report that it would be rising marginally to 2.5% by March 2027 from currently 2.3% in March 2025. And lastly, when you talk about the capital adequacy ratio, we are going to witness a marginal dip from 17.2% in March 2025 to 17% in March 2027. Now, what is capital adequacy ratio? So, capital adequacy ratio is Tier 1 capital plus Tier 2 capital divided by the risk weighted assets. It basically, in simple terms, it tells us that whether the bank has enough capital to suffer or to deal with the losses in case the loans that it has given are not returned by the borrower. Okay. Tier 1 capital basically refers to the core capital of the bank, which it raises by issuing additional Tier 1 bonds, and Tier 2 capital basically is the money which the bank is able to raise by issuing hybrid kind of instrument, other kind of bonds, etc. Okay. So that's all that we need to know from today's analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next, so don't forget to practice the quiz. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a very nice day, all of you.